Tonight, more dominoes are falling in the Karen Reed case. 2 officers with ties to her murder investigation have been disciplined. Here's WBZ's Tammy Mutasa with the new developments.
In January 2022, Karen Reed became the prime suspect in the death of her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, who was found dead in a snowbank after allegedly being struck by her SUV. What seemed like a straightforward case quickly turned into confusion, with crucial evidence missing and conflicting testimonies. The police, initially certain of Karen's guilt, found themselves stuck at a dead end and were unable to make sense of the mounting questions. But then, a search on the phone of someone else connected to the case, which was "How long to die in the cold," changed everything. This scary search revealed a crucial detail that no one had considered before. It raised questions about the true nature of John's death and whether there was more to the story than anyone had realized. Could Karen really be guilty, or was something far more sinister at play? The truth might be hidden in plain sight.
And then we get a photograph, and in the background, we're able to identify 3 or 4 of the people in the background. So there's more witnesses, and now we identify them. Now we're broadening the scope of the witness pool.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Bottom line, with just tracking the location of everyone.
It was a bitterly cold morning on January 29th, 2022, when Karen Reed, who was a 43-year-old finance lecturer and equity analyst, saw what could only be described as her worst nightmare. The evening had started like any other casual night out with her boyfriend, named John O'Keefe, who was a 46-year-old Boston police officer. Little did Karen know it would be the last time she'd ever spend a night with him. Before moving the party to Brian Albert's house, the two had enjoyed drinks together at a local bar in Canton, which is a quiet town just outside the city. Brian was a fellow Boston cop who lived on Fairview Road, and it was there that the night took a devastating and mysterious turn.
A judge declines to dismiss 2 charges, including murder, in the case of Karen Reed. Reed is accused of ramming her SUV into her then-boyfriend, John O'Keefe, and leaving him for dead in a January 2022 snowstorm.
By the time Karen arrived at Brian's home the following morning, the scene before her was one of horror. John was lying lifeless in the snowbank outside, with blood still fresh on his face. His body was cold and bruised, his eyes swollen shut, and the blood from his nose stained the snow around him. How had he ended up there? What had happened to him? And most haunting of all, had she been somehow involved? These were the questions that revolved in Karen's mind as she stood frozen and trying to comprehend the unthinkable. The police were called, and what seemed like an unfortunate accident quickly became something much more complicated. It wasn't just a night gone wrong. Something darker had happened, and soon the truth would start to come out through the investigation.
O'Keefe, a Braintree native, was laid to rest at Blue Hill Cemetery. During the eulogy, his brother says his death leaves behind a void they can never fill. Live in Braintree, Emily Maha, WCVB News Center 5.
The night before John O'Keefe's tragic death was filled with the kind of casual, carefree moments that often come with a night out with friends. Like many couples, Karen and John spent the evening socializing and enjoying each other's company, and never imagining that it would be their last night together. It all began at the Waterfall Bar, which is a cozy spot where they meet up with friends for drinks and conversation. The night felt like any other. After a while, the group decided to continue the evening at the home of Brian Albert. Though they weren't a particularly close-knit group, everyone knew each other well enough. Brian and John had worked together, but their friendship was more professional than personal. Brian's wife, named Nicole, and Jennifer McCabe, John's longtime friend and Brian's sister-in-law, were also at the gathering. It was a simple night with good company, a few drinks, and the kind of casual get-together that often ends without any real drama. But things took a strange turn as the night wore on. Around midnight, Karen dropped John off at the front door of Brian's house. She recalls seeing him walk inside, then heading home herself and believing he'd made it safely inside the house. However, there was a shocking twist when the police later pieced together the timeline of events. Brian and Jennifer both claimed that John never entered the house.
This storm, it had it all. I mean, just insane amounts of snow, hurricane force wind gusts, and here along the coastline, just south of Boston, we had incredible waves that were banging up against this newly reinforced seawall and up and over this road and these homes.
Hours passed, and Karen had been looking for John, but he was nowhere around. Around 6 a.m., John's body was discovered in a snowbank just outside Brian Albert's house. His body was cold and lifeless. For Karen, standing there in shock, and she was muttering, had she hit him with her car? As the investigation into John O'Keefe's death revealed, Karen Reid quickly became the prime suspect. What was initially considered a tragic accident soon turned into something darker. The prosecution claimed that after a heated argument, Karen intentionally hit John with her SUV and knocked him into a snowbank where he lay for hours. They pointed to Karen's words to paramedics, "I hit him," as a confession and a broken taillight found near the scene. However, Karen's defense argued the evidence was inconsistent and she did not intentionally harm John. The case was far from clear and the truth remained uncertain.
Is the New England case that's fixated the nation this summer. Karen Reid is the woman charged with second-degree murder in the death of her Boston police officer boyfriend.
As the prosecution closed in on Karen Reid, her defense team wasted no time challenging their case. They argued that the theory of Karen deliberately hitting John with her SUV didn't add up. One key point was the damaged taillight. The prosecution claimed Karen hit John while backing up and explained the broken left taillight. However, the defense pointed out that the right taillight was actually damaged, which raised doubts about the prosecution's reasoning. They also questioned the nature of John's injuries, which were far more severe than what you'd expect from a slow-moving vehicle. His bruised face suggested a violent impact, which was worse than a car gently backing into him. The defense's arguments cast serious doubt on the prosecution's story, which left more questions than answers about what really happened.
I put it right in the middle there again, a 5. I liked the evidence that it was frozen into the bumper when they found it.
The defense quickly pointed out serious flaws in the investigation and focused on Trooper Proctor, who was a close family friend of Brian Albert. Proctor's role in discovering the broken taillight and filing charges against Karen raised questions about bias. The defense argued that Karen was unfairly targeted, with the investigation too focused on her and not considering other possibilities.
I saw a photo that was sent to me in discovery or to my attorney that showed only, I believe, me and John in the picture. I think it's the same photo, only that's blown up to show everybody.
As the case spread, the media turned it into a public spectacle. The defense accused the prosecution of trying to silence them, while the prosecution claimed the defense was using the press to sway public opinion. In the chaos, the public was left wondering whether Karen was guilty or if she was a victim of a setup. The case had become a web of suspicion and drama, with no clear answers in sight. Would the truth finally come to light, or would this case remain an unsolvable riddle?
By May of 2022, Karen Reid's defense team starts asking questions about this animal, about these injuries, about the dog, about what dog existed at the Albert's house. Where is the dog? We started inquiring.
At first glance, Karen Reid's case seemed like an open and shut scenario. The evidence seemed clear. She had been drinking, had an argument with her boyfriend, and struck him with her car. But as we take a deeper look into the details, a much more complicated story begins to reveal. Now, let's walk through what happened step by step.
Very fascinating case to watch right now, and this hearing was something unlike we have seen. This case now in the hands of the state Supreme Court there in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Karen Reid left court.
A curious piece of evidence surfaced in the hours before John O'Keefe's death, around 2 a.m. Jennifer McCabe's phone had searched Google for "how long to die in the cold." While this might seem like an odd search, its timing raised serious suspicions. The defense argued that if no one knew John was in danger, why would anyone search for such a morbid detail? Karen Reed claimed to have seen John walk into Brian Albert's house that night, but he was later found dead outside. What happened during the hours between his arrival and his body being discovered? Did Jennifer's search hint at a deeper knowledge of John's fate?
I really liked her. I thought we connected from the beginning. She was very easy to talk to. She had MS, I had MS, and there's not a lot of people our age that I personally know that have it.
Adding to the mystery, a forensic examiner revealed that several calls between Jennifer and Brian's phones had been deleted, and Brian's contact information was wiped from Jennifer's phone. The defense believed this pointed to an attempt to cover something up, raising questions about what really happened that night. Brian Albert, who is a veteran Marine who served in Operation Desert Storm and a trained boxer, and he was no stranger to pressure situations. His deep connections to the Canton Police Department and Massachusetts State Police raised concerns for the defense team. Could these connections have shielded him from scrutiny? Karen Reed's defense team believes Brian Albert may have played a key role in orchestrating a cover-up. Could Brian, with his law enforcement and military background, have used his connections to manipulate the investigation or influence others? Karen Reed maintains her innocence and insists she didn't cause John's death. She believes the truth is being hidden and is determined to find the real culprit, which convinces those involved already know what happened but aren't speaking up.
I saw a photo that was sent to me in discovery, or to my attorney, that showed only, I believe, me and John in the picture. Okay. I think it's the same photo, only that's blown up to show everybody.
Witnesses say they saw Karen and John in her car that night, but there were no signs of a crash, no loud noises, and no visible damage to Karen's car when she drove off. In fact, some of the key evidence seems to contradict the idea that Karen hit John with her vehicle. John's Apple Health records placed him at Brian Albert's house that night, with his movements showing that he walked a few steps and even climbed stairs, which implied that he had made it inside the house alive. This alone calls into question the prosecution's narrative, which hinges on the idea that Karen struck him with her SUV and left him to die in the snow.
Said it feels we're the only ones fighting for the truth of what happened to John O'Keefe. And me and my family and my attorneys and my team have marshaled every resource to get to the truth. It just feels like no one else wants it.
Even more troubling is the fact that the prosecution never bothered to examine Jennifer McCabe's phone for over a year, and even though it was in their possession. The defense team argues that this failure to investigate a potential lead, especially when it was clear Jennifer's phone contained significant and possibly incriminating evidence, is an obvious oversight. One question that remained was why the prosecution ignored this crucial piece of the puzzle.
Jones, J.C. Monahan has the night off. You just heard from Jennifer McCabe. She gave us one of the most detailed accounts we've heard so far, as she recalled the morning Boston police officer John O'Keefe died.
As the key piece of evidence is the broken taillight on Karen's SUV, which prosecutors argue was damaged when she struck John. The mystery deepens with missing CCTV footage. Despite the prevalence of surveillance cameras, the crucial footage from around Brian Albert's house was never accessed. The defense was denied footage from a local library that could have shown when the taillight was damaged. Additionally, footage from a camera across the street of the Canton Deputy Police Chief's Ring doorbell was claimed to be irrelevant. Adding to the confusion, Karen's own Ring doorbell footage, which could have provided important details, is either missing or unavailable. With so many unanswered questions, the absence of this footage raises serious concerns about the investigation.
Is facing charges in Officer John O'Keefe's death. And WBZ's Christina Hager is in Dedham with the developments from a fiery day in court.
Another odd detail in the case is the disappearance of Brian Albert's German Shepherd, named Chloe. Karen's lawyer pointed to marks on John O'Keefe's arm that looked like dog bites, which suggested a possible confrontation inside the house. The defense argued that John might have been attacked by the dog, but the prosecution claimed the marks were just road rash from the accident.
Does this look like a road rash? I mean, the court's got years, decades of experience, life experience and legal experience. Of course this doesn't look like a road rash. It's not a road rash that any of us have ever seen. Or does it look more like claw marks and bite marks from an animal?
Adding to the mystery, Chloe was rehomed out of state soon after, which prevented any DNA tests. On top of that, during a tough housing market, Brian Albert sold his house for $50,000 less than its asking price shortly after John's death. Karen Reid's case is far from simple. The defense believes John might have been harmed inside the house, not by Karen, but by someone else. With Brian Albert's law enforcement ties, the defense argues he may have played a role in covering up the truth. At her bail hearing, Karen's defense highlighted her serious health issues, yet her bail was set at $50,000. Released on February 2nd, Karen now faces the struggle of proving her innocence. The case has become a media spectacle, with some accusing Karen of using her resources to fight for her life, while others believe she's innocent. John's family continues to seek justice, but the question remains, who is responsible for his death?
We have photographic evidence that my client's vehicle, before it was taken by the police, was in different condition than when the police actually evaluated it.
The trial of Commonwealth versus Karen Reid began on April 16, 2024, at Norfolk County Courthouse. The prosecution charged Karen with second-degree murder, vehicular manslaughter, and leaving the scene of an accident, which alleged that she intentionally struck her boyfriend with her SUV on January 29, 2022. After 68 witnesses testified over 8 weeks, the jury deliberated for 25 hours but remained deadlocked, which resulted in a mistrial declared on July 1, 2024. A retrial is scheduled for January 27, 2025. O'Keefe's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Karen Reid and accused her of causing his death. At the same time, tensions within the community have intensified, with protests and divisions as some question the investigation's integrity while others continue to support Reid's innocence. As the trial progresses, the truth remains unclear. With missing evidence, conflicting theories, and growing suspicions, Karen's fight for justice continues. Will the real story ever come to light? Only time will tell.
Karen Reid trial, I would say he's probably somewhat responsible for this massive response and why this case has become really the center of attention for not only Massachusetts, but even drawing attention from the entire country.